Why didn't I see the signs of betrayal sooner? That question has echoed in the minds of so many women, usually in the quiet moments. Not in the loud moments when the world is watching and you're holding yourself together with a polite smile and a steady voice. No, this question shows up when the house is quiet, when the phone is face down, when the memories get loud and the truth starts walking around without permission. It shows up when you finally stop asking what they did and start asking what you missed. And that question can feel like a heavy one. It can feel like an accusation, like somehow the story would have turned out differently if only you had been smarter, less trusting, less loving, less patient, less willing to see the good in someone who was slowly breaking your heart behind your back. Why didn't I see the signs sooner? But the real answer to that question is not what most people think it is. The answer is not that you were stupid. The answer is not that you were blind. The answer is not that you ignored everything because you were desperate or weak. The real answer is much more human than that, and much more honest than most people are willing to admit. You didn't see the signs because you were looking at them through love. And love, when it's real and when it's pure, does not look for enemies. Love looks for safety. Love looks for forever. Love looks for reasons to stay. So when something felt off, you didn't immediately call it betrayal. You called it stress. You called it a rough patch. You called it, they're just going through something right now. You called it, relationships take work. You called it, nobody's perfect. You called it everything except what it actually was, because the truth would have required a decision you were not ready to make yet. So instead of calling it betrayal, you called it confusion. Instead of calling it lies, you called it miscommunication. Instead of calling it disrespect, you called it a bad day. Instead of calling it distance, you called it space. Instead of calling it the end, you called it a phase. You renamed red flags because you were trying to protect something you believed in. You were trying to protect the life you thought you were building. You were trying to protect the person you thought they were. And more than anything, you were trying to protect the version of you that loved them. Because if the truth was really the truth, then that meant you were going to have to lose not just them, but the future you had already started building in your mind. So you didn't see the signs sooner, not because they weren't there, but because you weren't looking for a reason to leave someone you loved. You were looking for a reason to stay. And that is where so many women get stuck in guilt. They sit there and replay the entire relationship like a movie, except now they're watching it with the ending already known. And when you watch a movie and you already know the ending, suddenly all the clues are obvious. Suddenly you see every strange text message, every late night, every weird argument that didn't make sense. Every moment your body felt nervous but your mouth said, "I'm fine." Suddenly it all looks so clear, and that's when the guilt tries to move in. That's when the questions start. How did I miss that? Why did I ignore that? Why did I believe that? Why did I stay so long? But what you have to understand is this: hindsight is not wisdom, it's perspective. You can see clearly now because you're no longer inside the story. When you were inside the story, you were in love, you were loyal, you were committed, you were trying, you were forgiving, you were hoping, you were praying, you were being the kind of person who doesn't give up on people easily, and that is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to understand about yourself. You are not someone who walks away the moment things get hard. You are not someone who throws people away. You are not someone who treats love like it's disposable. You stayed because you believed in love. You stayed because you believed in commitment. You stayed because when you said, "I'm here," you meant it. But betrayal has a strange way of turning your best qualities into the very things that were used to hurt you. Your loyalty becomes the reason you tolerate too much. Your patience becomes the reason you wait too long. Your forgiveness becomes the reason they think they can get away with it again. Your ability to see the good in people becomes the reason you keep explaining away behavior that should have been a deal breaker. And one day you wake up and you realize that the very things that made you a good partner made you an easy partner to betray. And that realization hurts. Not because you miss them, but because you start questioning yourself. You start wondering if being loving is the same thing as being naive. You start wondering if being patient is the same thing as being a fool. You start wondering if being loyal is the same thing as betraying yourself. But here's the truth that takes a long time to learn. The problem was never that you loved too much. The problem was that you loved someone who benefited from you not seeing clearly. There is a difference. A very big difference. Because the right person does not need you to be blind in order to stay. The right person does not need you to lower your standards in order to love them. The right person does not need you to ignore your intuition in order to keep the relationship. The right person will not build a life with you while secretly building an exit. The right person will not make you feel like you are too much for asking for honesty, respect, and consistency. The right person will not punish you for paying attention. The right person will not call you crazy for noticing what is clearly happening. You didn't see the signs sooner because you assumed you were loved the way you loved. And that assumption is one of the most dangerous assumptions a good-hearted woman can make. Because when you love someone, you think they would never intentionally hurt you. When you love someone, you think they would never risk losing you. When you love someone, you think they value what you value. But not everyone loves the way you love. Not everyone attaches the way you attach. Not everyone respects what you respect. And one of the hardest lessons in life is realizing that you can be genuine with someone who is being strategic with you. You can be loyal to someone who is keeping options. You can be building while they are browsing. You can be planning forever while they are just passing time. And when that truth finally reveals itself, it can make you feel like a fool. But you were not a fool. You were a woman in love. You were a woman who believed what she was told. You were a woman who saw potential and believed in it. You were a woman who kept showing up. And there is pain in that, but there is also something very powerful in that. Because it means you know how to love. It means you know how to commit. It means you know how to stand beside someone and build something. The tragedy is not that you loved like that. The tragedy is that it was given to someone who did not handle it with care. So instead of asking, why didn't I see the signs sooner? Maybe the better question is, why did I talk myself out of what I felt? Because most of the time the signs were not completely invisible. They were felt before they were seen. Your body knew before your mind accepted it. There were moments when your stomach felt tight, moments when something didn't add up, moments when their words and their actions did not match, moments when you felt alone while sitting right next to the person you loved, moments when you felt like you were competing with something you couldn't see, moments when you felt like you were slowly disappearing in a relationship where you were supposed to be loved, but every time your intuition spoke, your heart held a meeting and said, maybe I'm overthinking, maybe I'm just tired, maybe I'm just emotional, maybe it's me. And so you gave them the benefit of the doubt and gave yourself the blame. And that is why you didn't see the signs sooner. Not because you were blind, but because you kept choosing trust over suspicion. You kept choosing love over fear. You kept choosing to believe instead of preparing for betrayal. And that says more about your heart than it does about your intelligence. But healing begins when the question changes. Healing begins when you stop asking why you didn't see and start asking why you stayed after you did see. Because that is where the real lesson is. The lesson is not just about betrayal. The lesson is about boundaries. The lesson is about self-worth. The lesson is about listening to yourself the first time something feels wrong instead of the 10th. The lesson is about understanding that love should not require you to abandon yourself in order to keep someone else. The lesson is about realizing that loyalty to others should never require disloyalty to yourself. And the beautiful thing, the hopeful thing, the powerful thing in all of this is that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you learn the lesson, you cannot unlearn it. Once you rebuild your self-respect, you do not negotiate it the same way anymore. The same things that once confused you will become clear. The same behavior you once tolerated will become unacceptable. The same situations you once cried over, you will eventually walk away from with peace instead of pain. One day you will realize that the question, why didn't I see the signs sooner, is a question from an old version of you. The new version of you will say, I see everything now. Not in a bitter way, not in a cold way, but in a wise way, in a calm way, in a way that says, I can love again, but I will not abandon myself again. I can be kind, but I will not ignore disrespect. I can be patient, but I will not wait where I am not valued. I can be understanding, but I will not understand behavior that continuously hurts me. I can forgive, but I will not keep volunteering for pain. And that is when betrayal stops being the end of your story and starts being the turning point of your story. Because betrayal, as painful as it is, has a way of introducing you to yourself. Not the version of you that existed inside the relationship, but the version of you that exists outside of it. The version of you that is stronger than you thought. The version of you that can walk away and survive. The version of you that can be alone and be at peace. The version of you that no longer begs to be chosen because she finally chose herself. So if you still find yourself asking, why didn't I see the signs sooner? I want you to replace that question with something else. Ask yourself, what did this teach me about myself? Ask yourself, What will I never ignore again? Ask yourself, what do I deserve that I will never negotiate again? Ask yourself, who am I becoming because of this? Because the most important thing is not how the story ended. The most important thing is who you became because of how it ended. You did not just lose a relationship. You gained awareness. You gained boundaries. You gained discernment. You gained strength. You gained yourself. And one day, not today maybe, but one day, you will not tell this story from a place of pain. You will tell it from a place of power. You will not tell it as the story of how someone betrayed you. You will tell it as the story of the day you finally started listening to yourself. And that is not a story of loss. That is a story of awakening. If this spoke to you, I want you to do two things. First, don't be embarrassed by your past. Don't be ashamed of how long you stayed. Don't be ashamed that you loved someone who didn't know how to love you properly. Loving someone deeply is not a weakness, but now you must learn to love yourself with that same loyalty. Second, if you are a woman who is healing, rebuilding, and learning how to choose yourself again, I want you to subscribe to this channel. This is a place for women who are done settling, done shrinking, and done betraying themselves just to keep someone else. And if no one has told you this yet, you didn't just lose them. You found yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.